I came here with no idea of what it meant in the kind of broader social context. My brother and I used to walk up all the time to Cathays High School, an inner city state school in Cardiff, which is where we studied. But in my mind, I thought this might be an exciting thing. And I had this brilliant Welsh teacher, Mr. Thomas. And I remember he sat me down and he said, you seem to be really geeky and excited about studying math and science, and I think you should apply to a place like Eton. And so I remember getting my head teacher at Cathays to sign the form. He was on the bus breaking up a fight, and I kind of walked up to him and I said, I'm going to apply for a scholarship exam at Eton, and I need you to sign this form. And he kind of was just had like no cognitive space to think about signing a form. So he just sort of scribbled something on the form. I sent it off, and had a slightly patchy sense. I was good at maths and science, not so good at sort of English history at the time. And so they were still generous enough to give me a huge amount of financial assistance and totally changed the trajectory of my life.
Completely. Can you remember much about the exam? What's an entrance exam to Eton like?
I mean, the maths stuff is... it's a bit like the kind of maths Olympiad, so it's not your usual curriculum. You actually, I think, are not supposed to finish the exam. The whole point is they're testing not that you can get 100 out of 100. They're testing whether, given a problem that you haven't seen before, how do you sort of engage on it? And so the maths bit was really engaging and challenging. The general paper was kind of IQ test-like, so logical puzzles, things like that. And then the history, the geography, some of the other stuff was just really tough for me because it was all new stuff.
And how did you find your time then at Eton? Because it's got this sort of, from the outside, quite an interesting reputation, and perhaps not always the best over the last couple of decades in terms of its impact on UK politics and so on. How did you find the time there?
Yeah, I think the impact thing is interesting. From my point of view, as I said, my parents were working in minimum wage jobs very precariously in petrol stations and hotels. My brother was at Cathays High School. We used to live in a one-bed flat. So my brother and I shared a room. We never had a room. And then I was at Eton. I had this whole room to myself, this huge, expansive educational experience. As I said, it totally changed the trajectory of what I thought I could do in life. So for me, it was a huge gift. But in terms of impact, I feel like for some people, an experience of that extreme privilege educationally can instill huge conviction and a sense that you deserve to be running things, and that's one path. The other path is that there are lots of peers of mine as well who come out and say that they recognize that privilege and they see that isn't available widely, and part of the reason it's not available widely is because of the context of our society and institutions. And they want to use everything they've gained from it to try and move the needle on that question. Yeah. I feel part of one of many people who came out of Eton who want to try and make a mark on that. And I think that story is not a frequently told story, but I think it's certainly my story and a story that I feel very, very keenly.
And what is it about the school that really does encourage people towards public service, do you think? Because I think it's actually one of the challenges that we have as a country is that sometimes public service, being a civil servant, politician, isn't perhaps held in the same status as it is in Singapore, perhaps, and so on. But what is it about Eton that encourages people down that path?
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I turned up very interested in wanting to become a scientist. I wanted to work at kind of NASA or something and really push the frontier of understanding scientific truth, and left thinking that I wanted to really work on public policy, changing the course of how the country and the world could be better through that. And I think it's because you're encouraged to think big, you're encouraged to be engaged in the battle of ideas. And especially in that moment, I left school in 2008. In that moment, if you asked people, what is the biggest way in which you can make a positive difference in the world? People would say public policy. At the time, economics, development economics was a big thing as well. And generally, people felt that if you really wanted the country to be better, that politics was the way to do it. And so I think it's a thing that is attractive to people who want to make a positive difference at scale and try and do something deeply impactful, to consider that politics and public policy has for decades, if not centuries, been the primary way of doing it, and I think will remain so in the years ahead as well. At the margin, that changes from time to time. Sometimes people want to go into finance because it feels like the tough and interesting thing. Sometimes people want to do technology, as of now. But I think the common core in Britain that I think is really distinct is that people believe that public policy, the ability for us to get together and through accountable means of democratic representation, change the country for the better. I think that's a really long-standing tradition in some of our schools across the country.